So the second question I have up here is what makes your faith unique, and what I was going to say ultimately, and I'm sure you'd say there's something, is atonement, right? So for Christianity, so the perspective that our sin keeps us in separation from God, and we needed someone to stand in our place, who we believe to be Jesus, and his perfect life, his shed blood on the cross, is what covers us in our sinful nature and makes us righteous before God on the day of judgment. Of course, in Islam, so far as I understand, of course, is that this understanding of atonement is not part of things, and we would say the atonement is part of our we would call it assurance of salvation. So the belief that, I can sit before you here today and say, has God forgiven my sins? Absolutely yes, for all time. And I have complete assurance of that. I live in assurance of that. I do good works in assurance of that. My understanding is that in Islam, that level of assurance is arrogance. It's not in keeping with God's holy other character. God doesn't give us that kind of assurance because only God has that kind of assurance. And so I almost wonder if that leaves Muslims in a bit of a lurch. It's kind of like now I know that the misconception is that it's ignorance. It's just, we just don't know, right? But I see it more among my Muslim friends as humility. Like it's a humility, it's a righteous humility that I wouldn't possibly try to author my salvation or have that kind of assurance. So I'm curious, like, if I were to ask you, are you sure God has forgiven you? And
Definitely not.
Right? Is there any part of you where your heart just like yearns for that kind of assurance to be able to say, like, yes, I have that, I can live in that assurance, or is it? Talk to me about that.
So by the way, one of the things that I said to Chris was, I know that the reason you're having me come and speak here is because these are folks who want to learn how to convey their faith to Muslims and how to reach Muslims, And if I thought by coming here that I would in any way help Muslims convert to Christianity, I would not come. You know what I mean? To be honest, I'll come and talk about how we can all live together, but I'm not going to come and help you convert Christians Muslims to Christianity. However,
Freudian slip there.
Yeah. However, this was actually your first question, is why is this a good opportunity for you?
Yeah.
I'm here, to come and talk about the faith, and if, that's my responsibility, is to convey the faith in the same way that your all's responsibility before God, you see it as to convey your faith. So that's what I'm here for, and very happy to do it, and I believe that Islam is true, and I believe that it is the truth. What we say in the Quran, it says in the Quran, in Arabic, the truth stands out clearly from error. So I will just simply answer it, and then, if you think that it's nonsense, you think it's nonsense. If you think it's true, you'll become Muslim. Or possibly have a deeper understanding of your faith, because that's one interesting thing that I found in talking to a career of talking, and a lifetime of talking to people that faith different from mine, that I can often gain insights from other people's faith, even if it's not, I don't believe in the fundamentals of it. So here's my answer to that question. My answer to that question is that we cannot be sure about our own salvation or anyone's salvation, except for the people that, except for people like the prophets or others who are specifically mentioned in Revelation. And the reason for that is that we do not know even the state of our own hearts. There is a concept of hypocrisy, or hypocrisy is the one who pretends to be a particular religion, but is actually faking it. The fear that we have is the fear of the fear that we have is not. The fear that we have is the fear of hypocrisy. We have the fear that lurking in our hearts is not that truth, that we are only telling ourselves, a story about what we really believe. You know what I mean? Instead of actually firmly, truly believing it. And that is also That's a human problem. That's not a Muslim problem. Every single one of you who says, I know that I actually believe this. How do you know that? How do you know that you actually believe it? How do you know that it's not just a matter of pride for you? How do you know that you're conveying conversations about your faith is not actually an ego trip and you're gaining some sort of... No.
Do you want me to answer?
No, yeah, well, hold on a second. Yes, it's rhetorical right now. It's just rhetorical right now. So we are forever in a state of being between fear and hope. We fear, and not only that, I might be actually, and hopefully am in a state of faith now, but I don't know how I'm going to wake up in the morning. You know what I mean? I don't know how I'm going to end the day at night because our hearts are, because the human being is weak, and the human being is ignorant, and the human being is forgetful by nature, and sinful by nature, so that we don't know our end. We don't know that when you. I'll give you an example. There was a man. This happens all the time. There was an imam in Newark, New Jersey. Was walking to the mosque to lead the prayers in the morning when someone, if anyone knows anything about Newark, someone robbed him and shot him in the head. And he's going to the mosque to lead prayers. That's an ending that any of us, that any Muslim would be, it should be envious of. We don't like to be killed, but we're all going to die. Now, but what about an ending where we're walking down the street and there's a strip club or there's something, you know what I mean? And we say, I think I'll walk in, and then we get shot. Now, God forgives sins. That's a sin of the flesh. But what if there's something in your mind that pops in and is like, well, wait a minute, some doubts from Satan or something, or whispered into your ear in your mind, and you're thinking, well, maybe there's no God at all. God forbid. But those are the kind of that's the kind of danger that the human being is in because of his forgetful nature, because of his ignorant nature. So that's what's happening with the Muslims' professed lack of 100% assurity.
Yeah, there's this quote while you're talking from Augustine or Augustine, depending on what seminary you went to, and it's this quote that a lot of people says our hearts are restless until they find our rest in Thee. And my perspective, of course, I come from a Protestant worldview, is that there's a restlessness and I don't know what it's going to be like at 8 p.m. tonight. I don't know what it's going to be like at 5 a.m. tomorrow morning. And one thing that I am resonating with when you talk about it is weakness. The Scripture, New Testament says, His power is made perfect in our weakness. Our weakness is, and the answer I was going to give you to, how do we know that we're not just a bundle of human ego, sort of there. Chris, there was a theologian at Wheaton we would learn about. He's like, everything is just a projection of the ego onto God. Am I making that up? Who knows? Anyway, so
I don't mean generally across the board. I mean in the case of a specific individual.
Yeah.
No, human beings are certainly capable of faith.
Yeah.
And faith is true and it's real.
But assurance is egotistical in some sense.
Assurance is egotistical because we don't know. We don't know at what point our heart might waver. That's the point.
So we would say that we have the Holy Spirit who lives inside of, that's hard to explain. It's not about like a physical, it's not taking up space inside of me necessarily, but that the Holy Spirit intercedes for us with groans that are, this text in the book of Romans, so we have God in us, working in and through us for His good pleasure, and that is part of how we have that assurance is God gives us that positive assurance, and that's what we would say is the Spirit. I knew it was rhetorical,
but take my mic away.
Because you sounded like you were in an Alaskan snowstorm. Did anyone else hear it, or was it just me? You were like Islam.
Okay.
So,
all right. But here. Oh.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Now, have you ever known someone who was Christian and converted to Islam?
You.
Yes. Have you ever known someone who was Christian and became an atheist?
Yes.
Okay. So, did that person probably could have, at least if they were from your theological background, probably had 100% assurance that they're going to heaven, right? They are saved, right? Now, when that person,
I don't know, but let's follow the hypothetical.
Yeah.
They said, I have that. Yeah.
Right. I mean, they said it.
Yeah.
You see, there we go. Now,
They did say that.
They did say that, and they probably believed it. Now that person leaves Christianity and becomes something else, leaves the faith altogether, whatever, becomes Muslim, becomes whatever. That person thought, that they were going to be saved, and then now you would say, obviously, that person is not saved, because that person has now rejected.
Or was never saved again.
So, the question so this is actually a good point. This is actually a good point, because even though we would theologically disagree with that, in terms of, the person was never, a person who leaves Islam was never saved in the first place. We wouldn't say that, but what we would say is that person was fooling themselves. You see, so in other words, but they would not have, most likely. I mean, like, do you really believe that everyone who was once a believer in the Christianity that you believe in, that everyone who was once that and left it never was an actual believer, and furthermore, never really believed that they were saved? You see my point? See, what in other words, the precariousness of our salvation is the result of our weakness. That's what I'm trying to say, and
sure.
and the ever-present possibility.
Yeah, this is helpful to understand.
Yes,
because a lot of Christians here, Muslims say, I don't know, and then we kind of get into this like, there's no really good reason for that other than like I just don't know.
And it's the ever-present possibility, the ever-present vulnerability of the human heart to misguidance. So if I were to somehow convert to Christianity tomorrow, I mean, or
do you want to?
No. If I were to convert to Christianity, probably be
I will baptize you right
Catholicism
now.
or Eastern Orthodox. But if I were to do that, me now, and any Muslim would say, oh, that person, he's abandoned salvation. He's abandoned the possibility of salvation. So anyway, my point is, now, the idea that, and this is to disabuse you guys or to sort of discourage you from the idea that this might be a good hook for Muslims. I hear this a lot. I hear this a lot from Christians. That, wouldn't you really like to have assurance? The problem with that is, I would still, fear that I could lose my faith, or I could be, I could be a hypocrite internally. You know what I'm saying?
So God wants you to feel fear.
No, because there is, yes, you should not feel, you cannot feel secure in your ultimate destination. You cannot. Why? Because of our inherent weakness. Now, you know who can be secure in their ultimate destination? Angels. Angels can be secure in their ultimate destination because they do not have free will, and they are not subject to the whisperings of the devil, but the human being is. And that is the case for you. It's the case for me. It's the case for every human being by virtue of their being a human being, by the definition of a human being.
Yeah. Now we can go around.
Yeah.
And ultimately, what we're modeling here is hopefully what you're seeing is there's curiosity. I think that's part of it, and I would actually say too, we're modeling is probably a little bit of the messiness of these conversations. Like there's a sense in which, like, okay, maybe it's one step forward, one step back, 2 steps forward, 2 steps back. We're trying to, I wouldn't call it spar, but we're dancing. We're dancing. Yes, we are doing the Macarena. And, but in all honesty, I mean, curiosity is the currency of this kind of relationship.
Can I make another point, which hopefully is interesting to you, and I think will fill in a little bit more of the gap too, and that is that it is the very fear and uncertainty that that drives the human being to want to reunite with his Lord.
The fear of death, the fear of hell. The fear of hell,
the fear of, or the feeling of estrangement.
Estrangement.
Okay. So estrangement cannot be cured until we see God's face in the hereafter. You know what I mean? That's when estrangement is cured. That's when happiness will. That's when the human being will meet happiness, when we reunite with God. But our estrangement from Him can't be cured by the death of Jesus and the Messiah, who has that role, that estrangement can't be cured. That estrangement can't be cured by deeds. That estrangement can't be cured by anything except for that ultimate happiness when he lifts his veil on the day, when we're in heaven and we see him again. So because we came from him. We came from him, and we're still away from him. We're away from him physically. We're away from him every day, because you guys are all in. This is very typical of people of faith. We get together. Muslims do this too. We get together for conferences. We get together for, in our houses of worship. We get together for fellowship. We get together with saintly people, and then we go out into the world, and we feel that faith dissipate. We feel ourselves begin to be again, kind of chasing lusts and chasing desires and chasing the world. So it's that estrangement. That is what is at the source. But it's not only a source. You see, this is the last thing I'm going to end with. If you feel suddenly satisfied, that's the sign of a dead heart. That's what we say. That's the sign of a dead heart. The sign of a dead heart is the one who suddenly feels nothing at his estrangement from God. So actually, I would say that there's a kind of loss for someone of faith who suddenly does not feel anymore a kind of longing and yearning, for his Lord.
Yeah. This is by no means meant to be like a mic drop comment at all, so I just want to say that right now. What I am gathering, when you say that, something bad's about to come out of my mouth. No, but for real, as you're talking, maybe other folks here are thinking, like, wow, like I as a Christian have so many resources in the Christian faith to push back against estrangement.
So do we.
So there's a lot is going on in my heart just thinking about like Jesus saying,
That's the purpose of praying 5 times a day in a structure, so that you're always reminded. That's the purpose.
There is something I'm learning about Islam about the need to always be present to the faith and to never turn an eye because of what I'm hearing to be the consistent temptation to stray, or some version of that.
In the Al-Fatiha, with the first chapter of the Quran, we say it in every unit of prayer, Ihdina Siratal Mustaqim, guide us to the straight path.
Yeah.
So someone will say, well, wait a minute, aren't you already on the straight path? Yes, we are on the straight path.
Right now, because I'm at the mosque.
Yeah. Well, it's just again, we're not angels. Yeah. So because we're not angels, we have to be consistently. This is what's called the jihad an-nafs, or the smaller, the jihad of the soul, or the smaller jihad. The greater jihad was like, so the jihad of the military type jihad is like considered the small jihad. The bigger jihad is the jihad of the soul. The struggle, jihad means struggle. The struggle of the soul to surrender. To surrender to God, submit to God's will. Yeah. And to be constantly reminded and remembering Him. Yes, nice. That's right.
Well, thank you for explaining all of that. Yeah. That's, takes a lot of energy to try to translate that to a Christian audience. I just want to appreciate that name. That takes a lot of thought. So I just want to thank you for that.
And the reason you can't like use this as a hook for Muslims is that a Muslim would just think, well, hey, don't you want assurance? I mean, I'd love to have assurance. I'd love to be an angel. You know what I'm saying? I'd love to be free of this human condition. You know what I'm saying? But I'm not going to be free of that just by telling myself a lie, which is what I would consider. Sure. I could do the same thing if I was a Muslim. By the way, there are Muslims who think that. There are Muslims who think that they are saved and they act that way, and they but this is a heresy.